50 part-time students were asked how many courses they were taking this term. The incomplete results are shown in the table. Number 1, fill in the blanks in the table. Well, it says 50 part-time students were asked something or other. And in the table, the frequency tells you how many of those students answered these numbers. So this first item means that 30 students are taking one course, 15 students are taking 2 courses, so how many are taking 3? Well, the rest of them. So there are 45 accounted for here, and there are a total of 50, so that means we must have 5 left. And the relative frequency is the proportion of people who answered each one of these numbers. So 30, a frequency of 30 gives you a relative frequency of 30/50ths. So we divide 30 by 50, and that's where the 0.6 comes from. So for the second row, we have a frequency of 15 people who said the number of courses was 2. So as a proportion, that's 15/50ths, which is 0.3. And then finally, the relative frequency for the last row for people who answered 3 is 5/50, which of course is 0.1. Okay, and finally the last column here, the cumulative relative frequency. That's the sum of the relative frequencies up to that row. So, starting with the first row, that's 0.6. The second row, we add 0.3 to that and get 0.9. And then finally, 0.9 plus 0.1 is 1. And that's how the cumulative relative frequency column should always end up with 1, because if you have a complete table, this will account for everybody by the end. Number 2, what percent of students take exactly 2 courses? Well, this question can be answered directly by looking at the second column, the relative frequency. This box here tells exactly that. This is the relative or percentage of people who said 2. So it's 0.3 as a proportion, but as a percentage, that's 30%. What percent of students take 1 or 2 courses? That's the job of the cumulative relative frequency. The cumulative relative frequency adds up all the frequencies of all the rows starting there and going backward. So in this case, 1 or 2 courses, that means the first 2 rows, and so we have a relative frequency of 0.9 or percentage of 90. Notice you could do the same thing just by looking in the box for 1 and 2 in the relative frequency column and adding them up.